This episode of Selling with Social is brought to you by the 10th Annual AAISP Leadership Summit, where the sales community comes together to learn, share, and network. Join Vengreso and your sales peers April 3rd through the 5th, 2018 in Chicago by visiting bit.ly/AAISP2018 and use the code LEADERSHIP 1095 at registration. And now to Selling with Social.
Here's the starting point. The starting point is to first think of yourself as a leader. I'm not talking about manager or someplace on the hierarchical org chart, but to think of yourself as a leader, because the truth is you already are a leader.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Deb Calvert.
Mario, hello.
Hello, my friend. I'm super excited that you're with me today. Thank you for joining me on Selling with Social today.
It is my honor. I'm so excited to be here.
And we've got some amazing news, and I'm so excited because you and I have known each other for quite some time. This is the first time on my podcast, and I feel ultra special because I got you within a matter of, I think, a couple of weeks of doing something that is really, really cool. Tell us what you just did.
Just released my second book with my co-authors, Jim Kouzis and Barry Posner, and we're pretty excited about it. It's been in the works for a few years because of all the research that's behind it, but we did just come out and debuted as a top new release on Amazon, and it's fantastic. So it's fun to be able to be here to share that with you.
I love it. And do us a favor, what is the name of the book? You said you released the book, but you didn't tell us the name, my friend.
It is Stop Selling and Start Leading.
Stop selling and start leading. Is there anything to do with, helping to make sales happen?
Yeah, that's a good clarification because stop selling does not mean stop making sales.
Okay, right, exactly.
It means put away those salesy, stereotypical sales type behaviors that buyers resist and replace them with behaviors that buyers prefer. We know what they prefer because we did this research. And so if you use these behaviors, which are more typically associated with leadership, you'll have a competitive advantage and you will find yourself actually enjoying the work of selling again.
I love it. Well, what I want to do is let everybody know who Deb Calvert is. Some people may not know you. I don't know how they wouldn't because you're the great Deb Calvert. You're everywhere. But do me a favor, just give us a little background. I know that you teach at the local university here, UC Berkeley, the Extension School, which, by the way, I went to for 5 years, although I never graduated. I left and went to St. Mary's, but that was my first passion, and I sport Cal Bears, go Bears. But tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a background.
Yeah, well, I worked at a corporate role as overseeing sales training and sales and leadership development. So I had a variety of roles with the Fortune 500 there in the Bay Area. And when that company went out of business about 12 years ago, I decided to go into business for myself because I had 4 great job offers, but did not want to move again. So I called up all 4 of them and I asked them, hey, instead of hiring me, would you consider hiring me as a consultant? 3 out of 4 said yes. And that's how I went into business. My company is People First Productivity Solutions. We build organizational strength by putting people first through sales productivity and leadership development and team effectiveness work. I'm now based no longer in the Bay Area, but in the Midwest. I'm near Kansas City, Missouri, which is home for me. And I continue to work as an executive coach, a sales trainer. I have a fantastic team that does great work with our programs, which we customize. And I'm an author and a speaker and a teacher at UC Berkeley.
I love it. And tell us something that nobody would know about you by looking at your social profiles? One thing. I want something juicy, Deb. Give me something juicy.
You probably wouldn't know, looking at my profile, that I live way out in the country. You might notice that my P.O. box is in Peculiar, Missouri, but I live in a town that's so small that I have to drive into Peculiar to get my mail.
How long is that drive?
It's about 15 minutes or so.
Oh, not too bad. I thought you were going to tell me an hour or so.
No, it's about 15 minutes. I might drive a little fast, but I can get there if I have to in 15. And so because I live out in the country, I'm really into right now straw bale gardening, meaning, because I always look for hacks and productivity solutions, straw bale gardening means that you plant inside straw bales. That's no bending, no weeding, not even any watering, because I have it all on a drip system that's on a timer. So it's a beautiful thing.
All right. That's good. So it's called straw build?
Straw bales. So
straw bales.
Literally planting inside straw bales instead of planting in the ground.
All right, we'll have to try it. I have not. I don't know anything about it, so we'll have to try that.
You can even do it on the balcony if you live in an apartment in San Francisco. Straw bale gardening is a glorious thing.
Fantastic. I love it. So I want to get into talking about the book, Stop Selling and Start Leading. And first off, as you know, the listeners that we've got are sales leadership. We've got marketers, sales enablement, and business owners, right? So anybody who's responsible for revenue, they're listening in right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to talk about the backstory behind the book, Stop Selling and Start Leading, in my opinion, based upon our conversations and what I know and what I've read. It's very unique. And you also wrote it with two giants in the business world. So give us a little backdrop. How did this all come about?
Okay, well, first of all, Jim and Barry, they are extremely well known in leadership development circles. You probably won't read a book about leadership without them being referenced in some way, because their research is so core to understanding leadership. And they've been doing that for over 30 years. So their seminal work, the Leadership Challenge is what that body of work is known as. That was in my mind. I have worked in these three areas: team effectiveness, leadership development, and sales productivity for much of my career. And I've always kept them very separate. So there'd be days when I'd put on my hat, I'm going out to do a leadership development training workshop these next couple of days. And then there would be other days where I'm in field and I'm doing sales coaching and I'm working with sales teams. I always kept them very separate, kind of like on a toddler's dinner plate, right? The peas and the mashed potatoes never touch each other. So it was like that until one day, a couple of years back, because I was becoming a certified master with the Leadership Challenge, and Barry Posner was my mentor, and I was really just getting more steeped in that work to earn that credential. But it just sort of hit me like a thunderbolt. Like, what if these leadership behaviors, the ones that Barry and Jim's research proved to be absolutely essential for leaders who are the most effective ones around the world, what if sellers used those behaviors as they interacted with buyers? What would happen? And I was really intrigued by this question, so I took it to Barry and Jim. They kind of liked the question too. And we embarked on a research study with 530 B2B buyers, a panel study through Santa Clara University. And we found out that buyers would really like it if sellers did that. They told us that the sellers they already choose to do business with, in fact, don't do any of these behaviors frequently enough. They'd like to see even more of these behaviors. So that's where it all started. That's how we got to this place where we thought we'd better write a book, because that research was compelling. Our findings were pretty interesting.
So I feel like you're leading the witness here, because my natural next question is, tell me about this research. What was the leadership qualities that these buyers were saying, hey, I wish the reps that we've chosen to do business with already would actually do? And then obviously that this means that anybody else who, quite frankly, is trying to sell to anyone, that these might be qualities that we should display, use, implement, whatever it might be. So tell us about that.
So Jim and Barry's work, the Leadership Challenge, has been done with over 5 million people across the globe. And that's one of the reasons why it's so seminal. Their work, these 30 behaviors of leaders, are grouped into the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. So it's a little easier than 30. We can just talk about 5. And they know, it's been proven over and over and over again, that these 5 practices cause people to more willingly choose to follow certain leaders who exhibit the behaviors, not better, but more often. So frequency is very important. So we started in our research. We asked buyers, how frequently do the sellers you choose to do business with exhibit each of these behaviors, all 30? That gave us a baseline. And then we asked, what would be the ideal frequency? How often would you like to see each of these behaviors? And with all 30 behaviors, all 530 B2B buyers in our study wanted to see every single one of those behaviors more frequently. So that was what was so compelling, is that it was not some buyers, it wasn't segmented by some sectors, it was all buyers want to see all behaviors more often.
What were the 5, or what were the behaviors? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay. Let me give you some examples.
Or give me some top 3 behaviors that are going to help me sell more right now. I want to sell more. So Deb, preach on, girl. Tell me what it is. All
right. So these are a smattering. Let's see. For one, buyers want to have a two-way dialogue with their sellers. They do not want for there to be a list of questions, for example, in the needs analysis that you come and ask them, and it's very one-way. It feels more like a survey to them. They want to be more actively involved. They want to be engaged with a two-way dialogue. So that's just one example of a behavior. Another, this is kind of interesting, buyers want sellers to share, to celebrate with them any shared values and shared victories. That there's a collaboration here. It's something, again, that's about it being two-way, the both of us together. And not just celebrating like, high five, we got the deal done, but celebrating even the struggle along the way. We care about this so much, we value it so much that we're in it together. Another example would be that buyers want sellers to experiment and take risks. They want them to put their necks out there a little bit and not just stick with the status quo and not just settle for the first green light that they get from the buyer, but they want sellers to be curious, because curiosity is the gateway to new ideas. They want sellers to display learning agility and even humility, the willingness to take some feedback and to let the buyer be involved. That's the flavor of these behaviors that are in the book.
So let me just go back to the first one. Buyers want to have a two-way dialogue. Help me understand. So as our listeners are listening in, that's, to me, it's kind of normal, right? Like that you have to have a dialogue to be able to understand the needs of the client and then to be able to assess how you might be able to help. And I always say sales is the art of helping, period. That's what we do, right? But that doesn't seem like a nirvana thought, but I know there's an underlying nirvana thought inside here. What is that? Let's take the first one.
You bet. So it goes a little deeper, right? Dialogue is more than question answer. The typical needs analysis or needs assessment discovery process for most sales organizations is a list of 5 to 10 questions. They're mostly qualifying questions to try to corral the buyer into a certain place. And buyers don't really like that. They feel that it's very one-sided. So that's more like a diagnostic analysis or assessment, less than a dialogic one. Dialogue has some very open-ended questions. I listen closely to what you say, and my next question is a reaction. We are having a conversation where I'm not following a script of questions. I'm not just trying to bucket and sort you. I'm paying close attention, and I'm curious about what you're saying. So I'm reacting to what you say. I'm reacting to how you say it. If I hear any emotion in there or any sort of hanging statement that requires a good follow-up question, I'm really present for this conversation, and there's lots of space in it for the buyer too. That's the difference.
I like to tend to think of it as, there's a science and there's an art to selling.
Yeah.
And I've always said, and I can probably argue it either way, but the science part is 49%. The art part is 51%. And I think what you're saying is that the dialogue, we may oftentimes have a pre-scripted set of questions of what we're trying to understand to be able to lead down a certain path. But we also need to be listening, if you would, to what the buyers are saying so that we can throw those questions out. And it may not be product or solution A, but it might be product or solution D, C, F, whatever, something that you really didn't think that might be the way to start a conversation, as well as to understand some of the backdrop and the needs and the politics and how this came to be. That's the dialogue part that you're referring to. Is that right?
It is. And even if it is solution A, or even if you only have one solution to sell, What you get from dialogue is an understanding of why that matters to this buyer, how it's going to fit with everything else that they're doing, and so on. It dignifies the buyer to have that kind of conversation. And frankly, it gives you an opportunity for them to buy into the solution very differently than if you just have a run-of-the-mill kind of a conversation. Let me give you one more difference. When you walk in for a needs assessment, the most successful sellers, hands down, that I see when I'm doing any kind of field coaching, they're the ones who have objectives. They know what 5 pieces of information they want to walk away with, but they don't have 5 questions that are efficiently going to get there. Instead, knowing where they're going, they're a lot more efficient because their questions are more purposeful, even if there are 15 instead of 5.
Yeah, great point. And, I want to go on to the second point that you talked about, which was buyers want sellers to share value, share victories, even struggles. And I want to kind of tease that out. But before we do, we're going to listen to this message from our program sponsor. Hang tight. I'm super excited to share that Vengreso will be joining the AAISP and hundreds of sales leaders in Chicago for the 10th annual AAISP Leadership Summit, April 3rd through the 5th, 2018. In fact, I personally will be presenting, and I want to invite you to join me. The Leadership Summit brings together sales leaders from around the globe for a learning experience unlike any other. Attendees will find workshops, group learning, a technology expo packed full of today's leading solution and service providers, and of course, the infamous annual Inside Sales Award Gala. To receive your deeply discounted rate, visit bit.ly/AAISP2018. That's bit.ly/AAISP2018 and use the code LEADERSHIP1095 at registration for an amazing Vengreso only discount. Okay. So right before our program sponsor message there that we had, I said to you, I want to understand more about one of the 30 behaviors is buyers want sellers to share value, share victories, and even struggles. Tease that out. What does that mean in terms of a buyer-seller engagement?
This behavior comes under the leadership practice known as encourage the heart. And I say that for context. So here's the visual. To encourage means to pour courage into. And where are we going to pour that courage? We're going to pour it right into our buyer's heart. This is the emotional aspect of doing business with someone. And buyers really do need courage. They need courage because we're asking them to go back into their own organizations and champion whatever solution that we've brought to them. That means saying no to other things. It means fighting internally for the budget. It means being change agents to introduce whatever it is that we're offering in. And it means sticking their neck out, taking a risk, because what if they're not right? We're asking them to do all of that, and it's a risk. It takes courage. So to share the celebrate along the way, the little values and the victories, not just at the end where we shake their hand and say thank you for the deal, but along the way, praise, recognition, encouragement as they're fighting those little battles, and an acknowledgement that we value the same things. There's a higher meaning and purpose. There's something beyond the little things that they have to do along the way. We have to keep them engaged around all of that.
So let me give you an example. And I probably did this unknowingly, just by natural being inquisitive and wanting to share in the victories of this particular client. But here's an example, and tell me if this is what you mean. In one of our prospective clients, we were talking about their sales kickoff and that they had just had, and I asked him how the sales kickoff was, and one of the first things he said was, "Oh, fantastic." I was like, "Wow, that's great. Obviously it's a lot of hard work. You were coordinating it all. Why was it fantastic?" And he was like, "Well, probably the highlight of the whole entire program was the fact that we assembled 408 people across 16 different teams. And in 1 hour, we were able to assemble 101,000 meals, and we fed the homeless in Springfield, Ohio, and whatever it might be." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute. You did this at your sales kickoff?" And he's like, "Yeah, we did." And I said, "I've been in sales for 21 years. 18 of those 21 were in corporate. And I can tell you, out of my 18 years in corporate history, not one sales kickoff, which there was 18, not one sales kickoff have I ever been part of a give back strategy. That's phenomenal. And he was like, and he goes, the leadership team thought of it, and it was our vice president of HR, our 2 senior vice presidents, and we're like, we could take all the 2 days and just pump content out and just focus on us. But what if we actually took the time to focus on others? Like, how would that help build team camaraderie and culture and values? So from that, I said, this is an evident demonstration of true leadership. I would love to socialize your guys' example to the world on social. Would that be okay? And he was like, absolutely. I'll send you over some pictures from our marketing department. And so he sent me some pictures. He told me who to tag. We did it. We've got 10,000 views on it in less than 2 days, hundreds of likes of people just like acknowledging that behavior. So is that what you mean in terms of like sharing in victories, sharing in the struggles, or sharing in values that are pertinent and important to the customer?
Absolutely. And you got right to the core of it, because what you're describing is engagement, whether it's employee engagement or customer engagement. Engagement means that people have an emotional connection that causes them to take additional discretionary effort and apply it to the work that needs to be done. And ultimately, that's what we're after. That's what we want our buyers to do. It's what we want our colleagues and coworkers to do. If you're a sales manager or a business owner, this is what you want your employees to do. So I think it's a great example. And what I love about that, Mario, is that this is what we've done in the book. We've put stories from sellers to back up all of these behaviors, to show them. And actually, we got the seller stories by just asking, hey, tell us about your personal best in selling. We didn't tell them what behaviors we were looking for because we didn't want to stack the deck. But we got over 500 stories from sellers, and then we just mined through those looking for the behaviors. And sure enough, when people are at their personal best in selling, they are showing up as leaders.
Give me an example of one of those extraordinary stories, if you would. I mean, I obviously gave mine, and there was no, I didn't know where this would go, right? So now it's on record, and now we can use that one.
In the next edition of the book, it's in there.
There you go, exactly. Give me another example of a story that you saw that personified, some of these behaviors, or what we had just talked about in terms of like sharing values.
Let me give you 3 stories because they make another point that I think is really important. It is all about relationships, and we've not used that word, but we've come at relationships from a few angles here. So, there's a story that comes from someone named Lemna Parker, and Lemna Parker's story in the book illustrates many things, including the fact that relationships between buyers and sellers really do matter. Lemna was hot after a target prospect. She sells programs to home builders, and she couldn't get a meeting with the decision maker. So to earn that meeting and to prepare for that meeting, she pulled out all the stops, building relationships in the corporate office of the home builder, going out to home sites where they had model homes, and working with sales counselors to better understand the business and some of its challenges. She built all these relationships by learning about the company's business model and about their long-range plans. And eventually, because she was able to position herself as a partner who truly knew the business, because she'd built all those relationships, she was able to get the meeting with and quickly build the relationship with the decision maker. So that's a story about how relationships matter, and it is about sharing the values because she learned what the values were from all of those different people that she worked with. But what I think is important to note is not only do relationships matter, but demonstrating your value matters too. So there's another story in the book from Kyle Holman. Kyle works for a company called All Search Professional Staffing, and he spent about 6 months wooing a prospect, and he did a great job of demonstrating value. He did such a great job of demonstrating the value of professional staffing services that he convinced this particular prospect to go out and hire those services. Unfortunately, what he had forgotten to do was differentiate himself and his company. He hadn't positioned the value of his own company, so the prospect hired another search firm instead. Good thing Kyle didn't give up. He went ahead and did a head-to-head comparison. He earned the business back to his own firm by not giving up at that point. So we've got to put the two in place, the relationship and also the value. Here's one more story. Sometimes you have to even go beyond that. Ted Hyman tells a story where he had the relationships, he had the value, but he didn't have quite everything needed to meet the needs of the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense. And so he went out and did some creative partnering with others so that he could give a comprehensive solution. It's a really great story because what ended up happening, he even won an award. The thing the Department of Defense needed did not exist, and Ted was bound and determined to create it. So he made an extraordinary sale by doing some extraordinary work beyond the current capabilities of his own company or any company at the time. And it was a matter of national security that he solved for.
I think that last story goes back to one of the 3 behaviors that you mentioned earlier, which was experiment and be willing to take risk, right?
It does.
In some organizations, depending on the life cycle of the company, there are organizations who are willing to say, this makes sense and it's a great product enhancement, it's a great solution enhancement, or it's a great consulting opportunity. This is something that's never been done before. Let's go after it and do it. And there are other organizations who are not mature enough yet because they've got to be laser focused. This is what we've got. This is what we need to sell. And the future is not here yet. And when we have enough cash, we'll be able to do those types of things. So I think some sellers may be constrained based upon the life cycle or the stage of the company that the company is in and what the company is willing to do, that it takes risks. But I don't think risk-taking, in my opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, risk-taking does not necessarily mean that we're going to produce or create something that we otherwise didn't have.
No, in that example, that was what it meant, but certainly not. No, experimenting and taking risks can mean, hey, let's just look at our competitors for new ideas. Or let's just, because this customer needs a little different kind of a service plan than what we typically offer, or a little different delivery schedule than we typically offer, can we make any kinds of accommodations or adjustments? As a salesperson, am I willing to take some risks, to ask some tough questions I've never asked before, to be humble enough to ask for feedback from my buyers to see if I'm doing everything I can to meet their needs? It can mean all sorts of things, and the small wins are every bit as important as the great big ones like Ted's.
Yeah. I like what you mentioned in terms of taking risks doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something or develop a product or solution that you otherwise didn't have, but it really drills down to the idea of the different types of risks that you might take. Could be from a technology standpoint, could from a solution, a product or service standpoint. It could be developing something new, developing new research, or it could be as simple as, and you mentioned the competition, like understanding competition. And that's a really great one. I'll get to the or in a second, but I remember one of my largest clients at that time, Fortune 11 company, the largest pharmaceutical distribution company in the world, the CIO, a direct report to the CEO, he said to me when I asked him, why do you take an appointment with me, but you won't take an appointment with the other, and at that time I was in the telecommunication space, with the other telecom vendors. Yeah. And he said to me, the reason why I take appointments with you is because every time I speak to you, you understand what my competition is doing. And what I want to know is how do I one-up my competition?
Yeah.
And so by helping me understand your insights, and you're not necessarily giving me confidential information because some of these competitors are not necessarily your clients, you're telling me about the trends, you're telling me the things they're doing from a technology standpoint, you're telling me the things that they're doing from that you can see visibly speaking, or that you're hearing in the marketplace. That's what I want to know, because I want to be better than them. I don't want to be the same. I want to be better than them. And I want you and your product and your technology to help me. And I believe that that's like taking the risk, right? Of providing that information and having that, going out and doing the research and understanding what's happening in the marketplace so that you can come back and add more value to the client space. And at the very baseline, I didn't develop a new product. I didn't develop a new solution. That is a behavioral change. And I totally agree with you. And I can see that even in my own sales career, how I've done that. And oftentimes I think most of us don't even know we're doing these things, right?
Yeah.
Until someone points it out to me like you have. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Okay. So here's 2 things that I want to add on to that. First of all, is the root word of leader is guide. And if we can guide our buyers, think about guiding, meaning taking them to a new place, a place they've never been before. You've got your machete and you're chopping down the obstacles along the way to make this path and guide them to this awesome new place that they didn't even know it was possible to get to. That's what leaders do. And it sounds like that's what you were doing in that example. You were providing a pathway that particular CIO couldn't find anywhere else. And that made you valuable. That's what leaders do. The other thing that you remind me of here is that yes, the best sellers do a lot of these things. If they were to assess themselves on the 30 behaviors, they'd probably give themselves pretty high marks on the frequency. But what's really important to note is that even among the sellers that buyers already choose to do business with, the baseline of frequency is still short of the ideal frequency. So there's room for us all to do even more of these things if we just know what they are.
And that having been said, we only talked about 3 different behaviors out of the 30 that will help make us better leaders or people that guide our customers. I love that one. I'm going to steal that. But help me understand, is this to be able to be better and to be able to sell more and to be able to be better at our craft? Is it easy to implement these 30 behaviors? Or if it's not, what's a good starting point? Or if it is, what's a good starting point? Either way.
It's super easy. See, behaviors, doing them more frequently, that's just a choice. You don't need special skills. You don't need special characteristics. You don't need permission. You don't need for your boss to green light this. You just can choose to do any one or all 30 of these behaviors more frequently. That's the good news. It's so easy, though, that people often overlook some of these that are the more common sense ones, or they give themselves a check mark, I'm already doing that, without understanding that they could do each of these things more frequently. Here's the starting point. The starting point is to first think of yourself as a leader. I'm not talking about manager or someplace on the hierarchical org chart, but to think of yourself as a leader, because the truth is you already are a leader. Whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, people are paying attention to what you say and what you do. They're following your lead. You're guiding your buyers somewhere. And if you're not guiding them intentionally, you're probably guiding them to a place you don't want to take them, a place that's not as productive as it could be for you and for them. So to be able to more deliberately make the difference that you want to make, to guide people where you do want to take them, that requires being a little more thoughtful and thinking of yourself as a leader. Where am I going to take this buyer today? That's the starting place.
I like it. That's simple, easy. And from a behavioral exercise, should we, look at these 30 behaviors and try working on one a week? I mean, one a day? I mean, what's my cadence look like?
Yeah, I would even break it down to something simpler. The 30 behaviors are grouped into 5 practices of exemplary leadership. When you read the book and you understand the 5 practices, you'll know. If you're honest with yourself, you'll know what the starting point is for you. Is it to do the one called encourage the heart that I talked about? Or is it for you going to be more important to start with the one that comes first called model the way? And given our limited amount of time, we haven't talked about all 5, but they are all equally easy to understand. And they are all behavioral, so it's just about making the choices. And you can start anywhere. Wherever you start, it's going to be a benefit. Buyers want to see all of these more frequently.
Well, and how they can start is buy the book.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And we will put into the show notes as well onto this podcast, the link to be able to purchase the book as well. But Deb, is there anything that we might be able to give folks? Maybe you want to, maybe a chapter or something that they can actually download and look at and kind of get a taste of the book. Would you be open to doing that?
Let's do it. For you, Mario, anything.
For all my listeners, there you go. If you don't ask, you won't receive. And for me, Mario, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah. How about we give folks, it's a brand new book, so this is not something that's really out there. How about we give them a free first chapter so they can get a sneak peek? And we'll just put that right there as a PDF on your show notes.
I love it. We'll make sure we put it into the show notes. We'll attach it, and then they can download it directly from the show notes or link back to get to the download. So very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I got 2 more questions for you, but is there anything particularly that you were surprised as we close out this discussion, you were surprised about the research and findings that, would help us to become better sellers?
There were a few surprises, and thank goodness we had solid research behind this, and that one of my co-authors is the former dean of the business school at Santa Clara University, and he understands analysis and statistics as well as he does, because I rejected a few of the findings initially. One of the findings that I was very surprised by was the consistency of the research. I expected in different sectors of buyers or in different age groups or in different levels of buying complexity. I expected there to be a lot of differences, and there simply weren't. Buyers across the board really want to see all 30 of these behaviors. And that universal truth then that comes from that makes it much easier than I expected for sellers to adopt these behaviors.
I love it. So if it makes it easier to adopt these behaviors, then everybody should be amazing at sales.
Why not, right? If we've all been just dying to know what is it that these fickle, demanding buyers want from us in this day and age. And now we know this is the behavioral blueprint. You do these things and people are more willing to meet with you and more likely to buy from you. That's exactly what we found in the research and as we interface the stories from sellers too. So
the secret sauce is in stop selling and start leading.
Yes.
Okay, we're sold.
Okay.
Do me a favor, Deb. I always love to ask all my guests, if someone wants to get in touch with you, if they want to connect with you, how do they do that? Should they email you, connect on LinkedIn, Twitter? Where should they go to be able to find the great Deb Calvert?
Same places they find the great Mario Martinez. So on social media, you'll find me with the handle of @PeopleFirstPS, which is standing for my company name, People First Productivity Solutions. I'm Deb Calvert on LinkedIn. And if you want to email me, I love to hear feedback and questions about anything that I'm working on. I'll put you right into our research. So you'll be doing me a favor too. So that's email, deb.calvert@peoplefirstps.com. Let's talk.
I love it. And Deb, my final question for you for the day, your all-time favorite movie?
I like movies almost as much as I like books, so that's a hard question. All right, I'm in a sappy mood right now, so I'll go ahead and put it out there. My favorite movie is Pixar's movie Up.
Up.
Movie Up.
I don't know if I've seen that one. What is that one
about? Now you have a weekend assignment. That is a very poignant movie about a relationship that a man and a woman have through their life and what happens later in that relationship and as he finds himself alone. And this is all a cartoon, by the way. It's about self-discovery and it's about human-to-human connections.
I wonder what my 7-year-old and 4-year-old haven't asked about it. I got to figure out. Okay, I haven't seen it. I have a new movie now to go see.
You'll be able to rent it and watch it with the kids this weekend. It's worth it.
I love it. Well, Deb, I'm so excited and so thankful that you joined me on Selling with Social here. And for all of you listening in, please don't tune out because we have this message for you now. Don't forget to join Vengreso and hundreds of sales leaders from around the globe, April 3rd through the 5th, 2018 in Chicago for the 10th annual AAISP Leadership Summit. To receive your deeply discounted rate, visit bit.ly/AAISP 2018. That's bit.ly/AAISP 2018. And use the code LEADERSHIP1095 at registration for an amazing Vengreso-only discount. Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.